Hey there, welcome to the Game Artist Podcast. My name is Ryan Kingsline. I am the founder of the Game Art Institute, where we train artists for the career of their lives. In this podcast, we interview amazing game artists to see what makes them tick and see how they got where they are today. So sit back, relax. I look forward to sharing their journey with you. All right. Hey, David, you there? All right. Well, let's get ourselves looking at your screen. So, thank you so much for being here. I know, it takes a bit to get here and all that stuff. Where are you at? Are you on East Coast or West Coast?
I'm in the East Coast. Yeah, I'm in North Carolina.
Cool. Are you on the job right now or at the job?
Yes.
Where's
Yep.
the job?
I'm at Red Storm Entertainment. We're part of Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, I have to ask you, is it Ubisoft or Ubisoft? Like, I'm trying to
I
figure this one out.
I think the French thing it'd probably be Ubisoft. Ubi. They
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But
But
you're,
but
yeah.
I probably said it both ways, and I probably
Okay.
say Ubisoft more than I do Ubi. So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. All
Yeah.
right. I just
Yeah.
don't want to come across as a jerk because, everybody I
No.
talk to, we're all like, wait, no, it's said this way. No, it's said that
No. No. No worries.
way. So what do you do there? Environment artist. And what I'm asking here because is like, well, I'll say it this way. I mean, environment arts is, to me, it's the area that has changed in our industry more than anything else. Like character art totally changed, 12 years ago. That change is largely locked in, and substance definitely changed a lot of stuff. But environment arts, oh my God. So what do you do as an environment artist? What does that mean?
Um, yeah, so it has changed a lot. And it's still changing quite a bit. And I saw like a little bit of what you were showing there was the AI stuff, and
Yeah.
that's sure to change things even more. But so currently, I am more focused on props,
Hmm.
and I worked on the Division Two, and I'm working on the Division Two currently. Um, and so yeah, we split things up. We call level artists. We have level artists, we have building artists, and we have prop artists, and we have texture artists, and we call them all environment artists. But which is a little confusing.
Hmm.
But they are distinct things. But as a prop artist, I've done a little bit of all of those things, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but but primarily what we do, especially working on the division, working on a big open world game. I don't know exactly how many props we had in the last game, but it was in the thousands, and so we can't make all that stuff in house. So a
Right.
big part of that, does become working with outsourcing, um, and helping. Yeah, there's a big section of just like helping decide like what kind of props need to be made to fill out the world, and how we can do things, in the most efficient manner, and figuring out all the metrics, and how we can, most efficiently use textures, doing all that sort of stuff.
Right.
So that's a big, or at least, on the last two games I worked on, that's been a big chunk of it. And then it's after that, it's for me, it's actually making the props that are more custom to the areas that we're making, and helping reintegrate and fix outsourcing stuff, and working with a level artist to get the things that they need. Um,
Got it.
Sorry, I hope
So
that wasn't too all over the place, but
no, I mean that the career is all over the place. So that, I don't know how you could have solved that. 'Cause, there's also people that deal with the terrain and the look dev. So for your
yeah.
job specifically, so there's level artists. Can you explain quickly like what a level artist does at Ubisoft.
Yeah,
I screwed it up. I
yeah.
tried, but I screwed it up.
No, no, it's good. I like your way. I like your way. You keep doing it. um, so yeah, I'm not sure if it's true at all of the UB offices, but I, I think it might be. Like for the most part. Well, no, that's actually I know that it's not true. So for um, for several of the studios they work this way, but
Yeah.
our level artists don't generally make um, any new assets.
Hmm.
They're primarily just building out the world.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, which is a huge responsibility. So that when I say they don't make anything, they have a huge responsibility, and actually a lion's share of the work falls on their shoulders. But that's what their primary uh, responsibility is to build out the world.
So this could be like a level designer as well. Could be another title.
Well, so the level designers for us actually design the worlds, and they block out, like they do the initial really rough block outs,
Yes.
and decide the main flow
Hmm.
of how things are going to move. Well, even earlier than that, I mean, and we've already released this, so it's not, I'm not breaking anything by saying it, but I know we showed like how we did. We had got GIS data. I believe that's what it is,
Yep.
GIS data.
Hmm.
Um, and they built out Washington D.C. And so they had Washington D.C. like the layout of Washington D.C.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it was crazy to watch the video of them doing it. They did that over at Massive, and and they had the layout. And now things had to change and stuff like that, and they had to move things around a little bit. But that was on the level design
Hmm.
side. And then the level artists come in, and they start taking all the props. They build out. Our buildings are built on splines. I
Oh,
know
okay.
there are videos out there that show how our building system works, but if people have seen, I think Blueprints, they have something similar with Blueprints and Unreal,
Yeah.
and I know like people have been showing stuff with Houdini, but it's essentially where you can draw out a spline and then define sections of the spline to be like wall A. We have,
Hmm.
I mean, thousands of those walls, with different windows and doors and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And so the level artist will go through and do that stuff, and then place all the props around it, and then work with art directors and everything to develop theming and all that kind of stuff.
That makes sense. I
And they
get
do
it. Yeah.
the terrain as well. Actually, I guess you'd mentioned that. So they also paint the terrain.
So they
Um,
bring it into 3D and using splines, I
mhm.
imagine that's also a Houdini friendly pipeline there too.
Well, so ours is all in engine, but it is very similar to what I've seen from
Okay.
a lot of Houdini workflows. They just built it all in engine. Um,
Cool. And so your job is you are part of building the assets and interfacing
yeah.
with the guys who are kind of building these out, dealing with outsourcing and things like that. But really, I mean, at the end of the day, you're responsible for providing assets to these guys.
Yeah, and like for this last game, a lot of the stuff that I did was for so at Redstone we did the Dark Zone area
Hmm.
in the Division 2, and so a lot of what I did was um, working with our art director and our art leads and
Yeah.
developing helping create some of those main assets that our art director had come up with to define
Hmm.
the look of the dark zone. And so that's what a lot of like myself and the other prop artists we worked on those assets to try to because it's easier for that stuff to work in house and to where you can just go directly to the art director and say like that or to your lead or whatever. And like no, not like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're working with outsourcing, that has to go through our people and it's a slower process. So um,
Tell me about oops, sorry, just hit the table. Tell me about prop artists and prop art in general, because this is kind of really near and dear to my heart. When I built the boot camp for environment artists, the first time I ran the boot camp for it, we just did environments. And so people would go off and they'd build like, hey, I'm going to do Mordor. And
Yeah.
12 months later, like Mordor's not done. So,
Right.
they bit off way, way, way too much. So the second time I was like, "Ooh, yeah, something's wrong." So the first
Right.
thing I have people do is I have them build a prop because, it's like for character arts, the first thing I have them do is I have them make a face because it's like all the problems you're ever going to encounter are there. And if you can't do that, then what makes you think you can basically make an environment that is just a collection of props at the end of the day?
That that is so. I tell people the exact same thing. Yeah. Yeah. I see lots of students, and I get it. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
You just get so ambitious, like, oh, I'll make this huge, crazy world, and it's like, yeah, and I don't know how to unwrap things properly or like make shaders, you know, and
Yeah.
I totally get it, but it's just, and then they end up like, yeah, however many months later, and you're looking at it, and you're like, I really hate to tell you this. I can tell you did a lot of work, but this is really bad. It's like,
That's hard, but it's an
yeah,
important lesson because it's, and this is kind of, I mean, it kind of leads into the whole AI machine learning conversation, but everybody wants to get ahead of the foundations, and the foundations are the foundations, period, you know, full stop. So
they,
yeah.
no, yeah, I didn't even interrupt you. Yeah.
So what are the foundations from your perspective for prop art?
Oh man. Um, so that's 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 tricky. I think the so there are a couple of different ways of looking at it. Like one
Mhm.
is that you're just trying to get a job, and if you're just trying to get a job, people aren't as picky about poly counts, tri counts, how big your textures are and stuff, as long as things look good. So really, like just making things look good is king. If you want to make a chair, you know, just make it look like the chair. And honestly, like if I come back and look at how you made it, and later I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that, but it looks good. And it's like, well, I can teach you how to make it right, you know. So in some ways, it's like a simple, thing in that
Mhm.
you just have to sort of like learn those basics of modeling and texturing and all that, and just sort of make it look like the thing.
Mhm.
Um, but once you get into development, yeah, I mean the that's when things do get much more complicated because you have to learn how to follow the rules, and to make it as cheap as possible,
Right.
and then that becomes like a whole game within itself.
But it
Because
sounds
when
like from your perspective, that's the easier thing to teach people.
I mean I do think it is. I think it's uh, you know the other side, you kind of either have it or you don't. I mean, not that you can't get better, but
Mhm.
but you can look at some people and just say, I'm sorry. You need to work a lot harder, or it's just, But I think I've seen enough people who we've forgiven, I guess, for
Mhm.
their technical errors and poor choices, but because it looked so good,
Right.
you're just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as you're not, you're a nice person and you can work with people, we'll teach you. Um,
Yeah. Take directions, not force your opinion.
yeah, because honestly, most people, even if they know a lot of that stuff, once they come into the job, they're still going to have to learn another layer of what they know.
Yeah.
So you might know, everybody knows that you need to keep it at a low try count, but maybe you don't know like uh, where you should be sacrificing triangles,
Right.
like that
Yeah.
it should be based on what the player can see, or like whatever. There are lots of intricacies and nuances there that you learn over
Yeah,
time.
one of the things because topology is obviously one of the things that's on a lot of people's mind. If they want to be a game artist, they're usually very cognizant of topology. Um, but I spend a lot of time trying to get people not to think about topology because I think you were talking about it, that the first thing you got to do is you got to make it look like that thing. So it's got to look good first.
Yeah,
the modeling's got to be good. So we use a construction mesh approach. Just means we're just building it out in a way that makes our life easier. And then when we get to the low poly, then the people have this confusion between the construction mesh, which is all quads, and you're doing the quads mostly because you want to be able to control where the edge loops go. So the edge loops will flow into, create nice bevels, just make your life easier.
Hmm.
And then they'll create these low res that are all quads, right? And I'm sitting there saying, that's when you introduce the triangles is in the low res. So are you looking at the screen by chance?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, so if we're looking at the screen like for this kind of thing, right?
Hmm.
The dilemma that we have when we're thinking about low res, and what I'm doing is I'm asking your opinion on this right now is like if I'm thinking about how to decimate, or kind of reduce the polygons in these areas, are you using just real simple triangulation like this, or are you looking at people's work and saying, no, you need to try to keep things a little more organized? Like what is it that you use to evaluate good topology?
So, yeah. So for me, if if the undulation in the surface is noticeable enough from like where the player's camera is,
Hmm.
then I think it's worth to have that vert, and like in one of those flat faces or seemingly flat faces. If but if the undulation is pretty subtle and it's really not gonna be visible to the players, then
Hmm.
we just try to remove them, and just keep all of the verts in the areas where all the places where I've got all the damage.
Yeah.
That way I can get more resolution in those areas, and I just keep everything else cheap. Um, Plus, we use a trick that I know that other places use the same thing, but we use like corner dent decals on the
Hmm.
edges. So it's
Yeah.
like there's strips of normals, and it allows us to make those vertical, long edges look like they have some sort of notching and sort of, um, small, sort of surface variations, which also helps. So you can reduce some of your try count there.
That might be just a decal that just gets stuck on there.
Yeah, like if they're bigger chunks, like you can see some places where like I think right where you're circled, like that actually looks like it might be a bigger chunk. I think that is actual geometry.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I did for these. Some of them I did in Houdini too. There were it was
Hmm.
which was fun. I mean, actually, I didn't make them in Houdini, but I fractured them and then was able to like drop them onto a
Yeah.
ground plane and have them scatter. And I think I
Nice.
made a few more variations that I didn't put in here just because they all kind of look the same. Um, yeah, one of our tech artists, Christian Stith, helped me with that. And then once I set up that one thing in Houdini, I was able to just drag in other meshes, move the cutters around a little bit and
Hmm.
drop it. And then they required a little bit more cleanup at the end after I was able to get to a certain level of the remesh, but then I had to go back in and clean it up a little bit more. But
What do you
pretty
think of that
awesome.
program?
I mean, it's really weird. I am I I'm not a scripter, so I really wish that I had taken a little more time, you know, learning that side of things. And I mean, not that
Mm.
it's not too late, but it's such a big investment, and that's been like sort of a struggle for me,
Yeah.
is figuring out, is it worth the investment? But I it might be, because I mean, I think you were sort of hinting at this earlier, but like the future of prop artists, um, I'm not 100% sure what that's going to look like,
Hmm.
and maybe even in like 5 years. Um, and it could be that, I do think Houdini is going to be a bigger player, or at least tools like that, um, and being
Like
able to
the
set up.
like the fracturing tool that your tech artist built.
Yeah, like just
Yeah.
being able to set up more procedural workflows,
Hmm.
just because we have so many assets, and anything you can do to, move through those faster, and still achieve the same look. I mean, as much as I love ZBrush, going in and hand doing all the edging by hand and
Oh,
doing all,
yeah.
it just doesn't make sense anymore.
Hmm.
But it just takes too long.
Yeah. Yeah, and then not to mention, I mean, it's quick to sculpt, but it's the exporting, it's the connecting of the maps and all of that that's actually labor intensive. So it's like 5 minutes to do the work, and then it's just a big asset to that you have to put through that pipeline.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Oh, no, no, yeah, no. I was just agreeing. Yeah.
So for me, like I've actually all of my students will get Houdini training. Like anybody who's went through my boot camp will get Houdini training because I've been soaking steeping in it for 3 weeks now. And I mean, I'm kind of obsessive
Oh,
when I
good.
get into these things. And I've been steeping and I've been figuring it out and trying to figure out where the angle is and what's going to happen. And I'm confident it's if it's not Houdini, something like Houdini, because it's the proceduralness that just is becoming too rampant. Because at the end of the day, Substance Painter is that hybrid of procedural and I still have some hand control, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. What Substance did to the texturing game, I mean,
Uh,
it's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's been really impressive what those guys have done. And I think with what they've shown with the alchemy, I think is their AI based program that they just released. I think that's going to be like a whole nother level, where you know a lot of the things that you're still doing by hand in Substance Painter, where you're tweaking the generators and doing all that stuff. Like
Hmm.
you're not even going to have to do that stuff. I don't think
Yeah.
very long. Um,
Agreed.
and yeah, it's a weird time. It's exciting. I mean, some of it is a little, you know, I kind of miss sometimes some of the like more
Yep.
craftsman sort of side of things,
Hmm.
but at the same time, when you look at the quality of work that you can pump out and the time you can pump it out, it's kind of hard to argue with it.
We were bringing this up in one of the classes where the junior artists artwork, somebody had a thread on Facebook, I think it was, they're like, well, show us your junior level work. And then people were like, shit, that's your junior level work? Like, what? And then there was this whole conversation of they're doing seniors work at this point. And oh my God, juniors. And then there was a conversation about the business execs are like, okay, we're going to get free labor or cheap labor, not free. We're going to get cheaper labor. And I mean, definitely this industry does not bode well for people who want to just relax and work to retirement. That's a given. Um,
No,
but it's something to remember. I think that this industry, even though like we were looking at the juniors, it's not. And this is my opinion. You tell me what you think. It's not that the juniors are like suddenly this year there's just like something in the water. It's more like the tools have gotten so much better that people just get better faster because of the tools. Do you agree or disagree?
no, I definitely think that's true. I mean, you know, like a bunch of us here at work, we got into for like hard surface modeling, we got into a
Mm,
lot of the Fusion 360 stuff a couple
yeah.
of years back, and that and I've seeing more and more people on Facebook, posting all this work with Fusion or Moy 3D and all these different CAD light programs, and
Hmm.
when you see what you can do, I mean, in the speed that you can do it, you don't have to worry about topology. You don't have to worry about all this stuff, and you can just spit out this high res model that you can bake down, and it's just so much faster.
Right.
And it still has, like, at least Fusion has the procedural element, and that it's got a timeline, and it sort of can be like a stack in Max or Blender or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but um, yeah, it it is impressive. It is impressive, and I think it's going to continue. I think that's one of the big things that I know I think about, and then I try to tell other people. You know, you have to think towards the future and try to think about like what value you add, because
Yeah.
yeah, tools are going to keep getting better and better. And there are so many amazingly talented artists out there. I mean, go on to ArtStation and it's just, it's mind boggling. But so you have to, but that doesn't mean you don't have a place. You can, and, you know, have a place in that. But it's just figuring out like what value you add, and because I don't think it can just be that you're good at making a chair look like a chair, because
Hmm.
I think that's gonna not be as important
Hmm.
in the not too distant future. I don't want to sound like doom and gloom, because I don't think it has to be that way. Like I think there will be something else. I just don't know what it is. Um, it's like, I mean, I worked with texture artists before the substance thing, happened, and they didn't like doing that kind of stuff, and
Hmm.
so they liked hand painting everything, and they didn't learn the new way, you know,
Are they still
and
employed?
so, uh, doing other, you know, like, probably more like mobile and,
Hmm.
you know, stuff like that. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
but yeah, and yeah, God, I don't call people out, but I'm just thinking of people who are like amazingly talented, but they didn't stay on top of that trend.
Oh,
Um,
we don't have to go far. I mean, I experienced that myself because I was like a ZBrush guy. I loved ZBrush, and that was my life. That was my
mhm.
focus. And but then Substance came about, and it killed a lot. People don't like me to say this, but I mean, it killed a lot of what ZBrush was there for. And
Yeah,
just in the same way that ZBrush killed a lot of things traditional sculptors were there for. I mean, I'm a traditionally trained sculptor. I saw friends lose, with families, lose jobs. Never, those jobs were
right,
never coming back ever.
right,
And
right.
so substances, came through and it just killed a whole bunch. So I know from my own experience, it's like I took a little bit longer than I would have liked to right now, to pick that one up. And now it's just like, God, it's so powerful. There's so many cool things, I can do with it.
Yeah, and I think photogrammetry is going to be another really big
Yeah.
thing.
Mm. We're looking at that right now too. One of my students, one of my business school students is building a course on that. And I'm excited because it's be, it's been around forever. I did a class on it like 8 years ago, but it's becoming
Uh-huh.
more relevant now.
Yeah, no, we had one of our tech artists. I know he used photogrammetry on a lot of stuff that
Hmm.
on several pieces that we used in the game. Um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah, and it works. And the things that he did, it's like, yeah, of course. Like, why wouldn't you? If you can do that? I mean, it looks like the thing. I mean, I can't argue with that.
Hmm.
But
Well, let's talk about this question of because what value you add, I think is a really important one. Um, so what value do we add? Like if one of the things that's on my mind as I say this is a conversation I had. My students have already heard me tell this story. I live in Laguna, and in the neighborhood where I live is one of the presidents of a local game company, and it's a good game company. They do a lot of great stuff, and we were down having coffee, and he mentioned that one of the things that he runs into is that a lot of his artists will work to the portfolio. That's what this was the way he phrased it. So they'll work to their portfolio. So they're on a first person shooter. They spend a day on the guy's shoelaces and shoes. And he's looking at this like, you just cost me X amount of dollars because nobody's going to see those shoes. So I need you to work to project. So while we're over here looking at all this cool stuff on ArtStation and whatnot, I think it's easy to forget that games are a business and that there's executives there. And the executives are like, yeah, this is great. I have artists that produce really great work, but I got a timeline and I don't want you to do those damn shoes again.
right, right.
So what value can people add to that? Because I think along these lines, it's like it's not, if I understood you correctly, it's not just about having awesome artwork anymore. You have to be thinking outside of that.
Well, I mean, I think, it depends on like what kind of position you're trying for.
Hmm.
I think um, if you're trying to make weapons or vehicles or, um, I mean, even characters. I mean, I think, those specific things, like, it really is about, you have to make guns that look just like the guns that they use in that game or you know what I mean? Like people want to see
Hmm.
that. But, uh, but outside of that, for like the majority of the art team, I think it is a lot more about, you know, being able to work with a team. And then, I think part of it is just, seeing, and this is a harder thing to define, but you can see people who just have like a certain eye for things,
Hmm.
and that are quick at learning, um, that don't make a lot of excuses.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, um, yeah, I mean, we've hired some juniors lately, and I say like one of them, and she was always over there like writing notes, when people were telling her things. And I mean, I didn't do this. And so, but it's a great, uh, trait. And you could just see how serious she
Hmm.
was about like learning.
Yeah.
And then she actually, took it on. And then the next time she didn't make that mistake. She had her notes. And it's impressive. But I think those kind of things, um, at the beginning level, I think that's really important. And I mean, I think it stays important as you progress. Um, but uh, going forward, though, I'm not 100% sure what that thing is. Like, I've been thinking a lot about like where props are going and where like, and I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, uh, I've been working a lot on my own, trying to develop my own sort of, I don't know, artistic ability, I guess, like my
Hmm.
uh, design sense.
Hmm.
Um, um, just because I kind of wonder if like that will be a thing in
Yeah.
the not so distant future. Where I mean, we already all like prop artists in general. You're given a thing, and it's not usually like that specific. It's like, hey, I mean, it's not, at least in my experience, it's not like, hey, we want you to make this chair, because that chair is, marketing won't allow you to make that chair. So you need to make a chair that looks like a composite of these four different chairs.
Oh,
So
lovely.
even at that basic level, you're doing some design work,
Hmm.
and so uh, so I think going forward, I think that is actually, I didn't say that, and I think that is actually a really important trait too, because you get other people that really can't do that.
Hmm.
Um, like you have to tell them exactly what you want them to make. They can't do the synthesis. They can't, and um, that's a frustrating. Um, it's a difficult thing if you can't do the synthesis.
I
Um,
understand. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Sorry,
sense.
am I rambling?
Rambling's good. This is a podcast of artists. Where would I be if we didn't ramble?
Okay,
Nothing to
I have
talk
to
about.
catch myself. Okay, all right. I just had to catch myself in that.
Got it. All right. So, and I think that's what we see on your art station is you're really exploring that. That's where a lot of the personal and the ZBrush work is, I imagine, coming in, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
great.
love ZBrush for it's just it's like 3D sketching. It's just
Mm,
it's um I mean, and the stuff that I make on it's not professional. Like it's not ready to be put into a game, or I don't worry about any of that stuff. I just like
yeah.
that freedom. Um, and it's fun to flex those muscles and Um,
Yeah, I remember Ofer told me once that ZBrush was a Ferrari, and when you sit down in it, as in open it up, because I was complaining about the user interface because I traveled to Ubisoft. I went to Montreal. Oh God, I don't know how many times, several times,
uh,
and would train at that studio there for a while. And I'd always come back like, hey, this problem with the interface, that problem with the interface, and this and that, and Ofer would always say to me, it's like, look, it's a Ferrari. If you step into a Ferrari, you don't want a Ferrari to look like a Honda. That's not the idea. The idea of a Ferrari is that you learn how to drive the Ferrari, and so you're okay with that. You don't want it to
right.
be built for you. That's Honda, that's Toyota, different market. And I think he's done a great job with that.
Yeah, actually, I think it was maybe like 2 years back at the ZBrush Summit.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure his name is Chi Vang. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing his first name right.
Hmm.
But he did a presentation, and he showed off his custom UI
Yeah.
for ZBrush, and that was really the like where I saw um, like how I'd been doing it wrong. It was just
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I make my own menus. I set up
Yeah.
my own hotkeys for all that stuff. It was like, right, you don't have to go looking through all those menus. Like, how did I not think about this? I do this in every other program, but I didn't do it in ZBrush. And once I set up my menus so that they're set up to hotkeys, and I can just, um, bring up all the things that I want the way that I want them.
Hmm.
It it's it actually is a very fluid program to work with
Hmm.
now. But without that, yeah, it is very different.
Yeah. It's a beast. So for props, we're not sure where this career is going. Are you at all worried, because I talk to people about this, and I mean, and I'm wondering that at some point we will have built all the props in the universe, won't we?
Uh, yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, I think about that. You know, I mean, and we definitely reuse. Um, and then, it's not like a complete one for one. You can just grab this from another project or from previous version of the project, and, bring it back in and it works 100% the way it should. You have to do some things to, you know, make it fit your shaders and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think, yeah, I do wonder about that for realistic games, like um, where that will go. But it could be actually that same guy you were watching his the AI thing. I can't think of his name. Um,
Promethean, and I don't know his name either.
yeah,
Right here. Andrew.
yeah, that Andrew Maximoff. Yeah, I saw his GDC talk a couple years ago. Um, it was actually a really good talk.
Hmm.
Um, and But it was about sort of the future of um, game production from the asset and art side.
Yeah.
Um, and like his point was just that yes, like with his tool, you're going to need fewer level artists to make a game. Um, but maybe there will be more games. Maybe you can make games more quickly.
Hmm.
So maybe there will be fewer people at one job doing X, but there will be more jobs. Um, or maybe his thing was the realistic games will be so easy to make that the AAA games will all look a little bit more stylized or done by
Mm,
hand, sort of,
beautiful.
because
Yeah.
photogrammetry and everything and all the AI, it'll just be so easy to do that it'll be more of the indie and mobile games that'll be doing, or
Hmm.
not necessarily mobile, but indie. Um,
I get what
and
you
this
mean.
is all
It's
just
going to become more stylized. Like though realism will be so commonplace that in order for people to distinguish them, just what they're doing, they'll have to have some aesthetic.
something that makes it special. I mean,
Yeah,
and I could see that,
me too.
because
Yeah.
like even looking at, I mean, even what they've been trying to do with like Call of Duty or like the Battlefield games, they're trying to push it uh, into a certain direction, I guess, to try and, I mean, at some point, it's like, how many of these very realistic looking games can you make? I mean, there will always be a market, but how many can you make before it's like, yeah, I've played in New York, I mean, you know, yeah, I
Yeah.
played in Chicago, yeah, I played in San Francisco, yeah, I played in, um, so maybe that'll be a thing. I do think I'm optimistic because I know that in the past there have been those things that people have looked at and they were terrified of, that it was like, this is going to destroy all of our jobs, and
Hmm.
and then there was something else that nobody knew about that happened, and it was like, oh, right, but then they just shifted into this, and I mean, it could be like the 2D animators, going to 3D animation. I mean,
Yeah. Oh
but
yeah.
so I don't know what that is, but I do think there is hope. But I just think the primary thing is that people have to stay on top um, of what's going on, and
Hmm.
keep evolving, um, so you don't get stuck, basically.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's really actually a great way to phrase that too, because we were just in an interview with the individual led me to the whole Promethean and all of that,
Mm.
where he was showcasing how on one of his projects, he had a Houdini artist, and the Houdini artist had a 2D map, and from that 2D map they made the entire level. That was it, the whole thing. Just like
Okay.
wherever he wanted ocean, he put blue. Wherever he wanted trees, he put green. Wherever he wanted grass, he put a different kind of green. Next thing you know, he's got this whole thing procedurally built, no level artist at all involved in it, except for, I think they just had props.
Right.
And then he was looking at it and he was just like, he was a he left us a little pessimistic. We were just like, oh no. Oh no. But you're right. I love this idea to remember that, this is all like everything we're talking about. Yes, we're focused on realism. Yes, that's the, I tell people this all the time. It's not the most couth way to say it, but it's like that's the pissin game we're all in right now. We're just trying to see how far we can go in this level. But the
Right.
thing that's motivating us is imagination.
Yes. And I think that we're still at the infancy of storytelling in video games too. And I think that we're starting to see more of it. I think in the indie space, and hopefully, and I don't think, I think it is going to become more commonplace that video games are going to become a more complex, and I think a more mature. Um, not that there won't always be the kind of games that are here today, but I think
Hmm.
they're going to be a whole different set of games. And I think that's kind of where like that Andrew Maximov was talking about, where it could be more games, maybe not more division games, but more games, in that instead of people going home and watching Game of Thrones, maybe they're playing something
Mm.
that doesn't even look like the kind of game we're like when we think of game. It's something bigger than that.
Yeah,
And
totally.
that's where like VFX and film and video games sort of merge, and it becomes you know something bigger than we can imagine right now.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point. Do you have an Oculus or a VR? I'm going to show you this We
I
Wait VR.
I don't. They still kind of make me ill. I'm waiting on the next round, because I've heard they fixed some of the latency
Yeah,
stuff. But
yeah. Yeah, it gets me a little there too. When we first got the Oculus, I don't know, it's like I got it as soon as I could outside of the Kickstarter. And so in the second round of it. So it was maybe a year, 3 years ago. Anyways, I put this thing, We Wait. And We
mm,
Wait, when you're in there, it's like this is the mobile of mobile characters. Like they basically look like Russian dolls with just maybe 64 polygons for an entire character
yeah,
and a texture on it, right? I mean, this is the it's the simplest thing that could possibly be. And I'm in this, and it's all about these refugees trying to get to Turkey. It was incredibly
Hmm.
powerful, you know,
Hmm.
amazingly. My wife's Indian, and she's had her
Okay.
run-ins with immigration, and run-ins with immigration are never like a positive experience, you know.
Oh, I
For
know. I've heard so many stories. Yeah.
yeah, you know, there's good reasons behind it, but beyond that, I mean, never good. So my wife,
Yeah.
she put this song on. She was able to stand maybe a minute, and after that, it was too intense. She was like, "No, get this. No, I can't," and she just left the room. So it was
Right.
like, you know, we're trying to go for realism, but here is these characters probably got 64 polygons, and
Yeah.
that brought my wife right into the moment, right into the experience to the point where she couldn't be there.
Oh, one of my coworkers suggested this game. What happened to Edith Finch? What is it? Something? It was just free on
Oh yeah.
PlayStation. And it's a similar. I mean, it's a little bit more complex than that, but it's still it's really stylized. It's beautiful. And yeah, I play, and it's a story. And I don't like games like this, but it's actually really emotionally.
Hmm.
It just resonated with me. Like, because you're first person, you're in this space. It's just a really beautifully done game. And it was kind of one of the first ones of that type of game, I guess, where I thought, like, oh, I could see how this could be an experience, and it's not like a puzzle, as obvious that you're just doing a puzzle, in
Hmm.
this fake world. It's like you're moving through, and like it's telling you a story. You actually care about the character, and, the space feels unique. It's like
Yeah.
that's really cool. Um,
Yeah. Firewatch
so
was like that for me.
you know what? I've never played that, and I've heard that. I should play that.
It was pretty cool. All right, so man, thank you so much for. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're right there at about an hour now, and I really appreciate this conversation. It's been really great
Oh yeah, thank
talking to
you.
you. Guys, if you want to find David, it's just DT Schultz. You can see the URL right up there. Make sure to give him a follow. Oh, and we got to give you a follow. I'm on two different accounts on here. Uh, and if you need anything, this is where you find him. David, thank you so much for taking time and for answering questions.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, if anybody needs anything from me, I try to get back to people as quickly as I can, and I'm definitely happy to help however I can.
I really appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much. Great talking to you.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
All right,
Bye.
take care. Thanks, guys, for being
You
here.
too.
All right. So I want to thank you so much for being here, for taking the time, and for listening to this podcast. And I want to ask a couple of things from you. Number one, make sure you leave a comment or you rate this on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever it is that you're getting this. That's going to make a big difference in helping us get the word out and get people to know who we are. All right. The other thing is I want to make sure you know where to find us. So you can head over to www.gameartinstitute.com, where you can learn about our flagship program, which is the Game Artist Bootcamp. This is designed for those who are really looking to move the needle on their career and really lock in that job. You may have gone to school and learned a bunch, maybe haven't learned a bunch. But at the Game Art Institute, the primary focus we have is the very specific industry skills, the triggers that you really need to hit in that job interview. What are the specific things that they're looking for? That's what we're going to be training you on. We're taking applications right now for environment artists and for character artists. So make sure you head over to www.gameartinstitute.com and apply today. That way we can have that conversation, make sure this is a fit for you, make sure that you're a fit for it, and if everything is perfect, then we will sign you up for that right away and get you into your training and start moving the needle on your career. All right? Thank you so much again for being here. Take care. Have an amazing day.